President, what do you make of allegations that Ilhan Omar misused campaign funds to pay for an affair?
I think it's terrible. I think those allegations are absolutely terrible.
Are you still hopeful that the USMCA will pass out?
Well, USMCA has become very popular. That's our deal with Mexico and with Canada. Unions are liking it. Farmers are loving it. Manufacturers are really liking it. It really means that we're not going to be losing companies down to Mexico and Canada, and probably elsewhere if you figure it, when you look at it a certain way. But they're not going to be moving very quickly to Mexico, Canada anymore. The USMCA is a very important deal. I think it's going to be a very bipartisan deal. I hope Nancy Pelosi puts it up for a vote. I can tell you many Democrats will be voting for it if it's put up for a vote. If it's not put up for a vote, I think it's a very bad thing for our country. It's a very diligently, very hard negotiated deal. We got the approval from Mexico. They voted. Canada's ready to vote. They've essentially approved it. And we are waiting for a vote. And Nancy Pelosi, I think, will do the right thing. I really do. And as I told Nancy Pelosi, view it as a bipartisan deal. But people want it. It's replacing the worst deal in trade that we've ever made, which is NAFTA, a total disaster. It took our car industry out. It took our industry out. It's one of the worst deals that I've ever seen.
Mr. President, you've given the Fed a pretty hard time. Would you actually like to see negative interest rates in the United States?
No, I just think that the Fed is making a big mistake, because if you look at what the other Fed equivalents are doing all around the world, they're at a much lower rate, and it makes us harder to compete. It makes it much harder to compete. Now, with that being said, we're doing better than everybody else. But the Fed is hurting me. The Fed is making it very, very hard to compete. But we're so far ahead of everyone since my 2.5 years. You look at it. Look, you go back to Election Day and go the day after. So you take November 9th, and you look, we're up over 50%. And that's pretty much amazing. You look at our jobs numbers are fantastic, probably 3.6%. African American, Hispanic American, Asians, we're talking about in the history of our country, the best job numbers we've ever had. And on this very day, I just saw a number, almost 160 million people are working, the most ever in the history of our country. I mean, we have incredible numbers. Now, if our Fed lowered the rate, I think our stock market would be like a rocket ship. It's already very close to a new record. We're not very far away from a new record. We've had some very good days in the last week, but if the Fed lowered the rate like they should, the fact is they went up way too fast, and they also did quantitative tightening. They did a double. Big mistake. Fortunately, the economy is so strong, it was able to handle that. But if they lowered the rate, you would see our stock market.
On Israel, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar yesterday said that the United States should rethink its policy of aid toward Israel after she and Congresswoman Tlaib were denied entry. Congresswoman Tlaib was later allowed to come in, but she decided not to. Should there be any change in U.S. aid to Israel?
No. And you should see the horrible things that Tlaib has said about Israel. And AOC plus 3, that's what I call it. AOC, just take AOC plus 3. And you should see the things that the four of them have said about Israel over the last couple of years. I mean, Omar is a disaster for Jewish people. I can't imagine if she has any Jewish people in her district that they could possibly vote for her. But what Omar has said, what Tlaib has said, and then yesterday I noticed for the first time, Tlaib with the tears. All of a sudden, she starts with tears. And I don't buy it. I don't buy it for a second, because I've seen her in a very vicious mood at campaign rallies, my campaign rallies, before she was a congresswoman. I said, who is that? And I saw a woman that was violent and vicious and out of control. And all of a sudden I see this person who's crying because she can't see her grandmother. She could see her grandmother. They gave her permission to see her grandmother, but she grandstanded and she didn't want to do it. So that's a decision of Israel. That's not a lot of people are saying that was my decision. That's a decision of Israel. They can let them in if they want, but I don't think they want to. When you read the things that they've said about Israel, how bad, and if you look at their itinerary before they found out, you take a look at their itinerary, that was all going to be a propaganda tour against Israel. So I don't blame Israel for doing what they did. I have nothing to do with it, but I don't blame them for doing what they did. I think it would have been very bad to let them in, including the four. I'm talking about all four, but these two that wanted to get in, Omar and Tlaib. And I think it would be a very bad thing for Israel, but Israel has to do what they want to do. But I would not cut off aid to Israel. And I can't even believe that we're having this conversation. 5 years ago, the concept of even talking about this, even 3 years ago, of cutting off aid to Israel because of two people that hate Israel and hate Jewish people. I can't believe we're even having this conversation. Where has the Democratic Party gone? Where have they gone where they're defending these two people over the state of Israel? And I think any Jewish people that vote for a Democrat, I think it shows either a total lack of knowledge or great disloyalty.
Quantitative easing, what are you looking at?
Well, I'd like to see a cut in the Fed rate because that should have happened a long time ago. I think they're being very tardy in not doing it and not having done it sooner. They raised too quickly, and I've been quite vocal on that. They also did quantitative tightening, which was ridiculous. And so, and despite that, if you look, I guess you could call it normalized, but if you look, our economy is doing fantastically. And if you take a look at the previous administration, they weren't paying interest. They had no interest rates. They had loosening, not tightening. And frankly, it's a big difference. And our economy is incredible. Our jobs, you look at the jobs market, but you have to be proactive. And so we really need a Fed cut rate because if you look at what's going on with the European Union.
Thank you. And, when I have one of the others, I guess this is Cortez. I said, I'm not going 3 names. Sir, her name is Alexandra. And the guy couldn't figure out her second name. It was so funny. I'm being interviewed by one of her name is Alexandra. Wait a minute. Wait a minute, sir. Okay. He never got it out. He never found his notes. I said, that's okay. I told him, just call her Cortez because I don't have time to call her by the whole name. It's too long. It's true. You're doing an interview. But she called our country and our people garbage. She said garbage. That's worse than deplorable. Remember deplorable? Oh, yes, you do. Huh? Remember Hillary, the deplorables. She actually said a word that was worse. She said deplorables, and what was the second word? Go ahead. Irredeemables. That's right. She said irredeemable. She said... She said deplorables and irredeemables. And when she said it, I said, boy, that irredeemables is really a bad... Well, that was not the one... You never know in politics, right? It's a tough business. You say a word, and you're gone. One wrong word. You can make 20 great speeches. Brilliant. They say he's great, the greatest orator. The greatest orator of our times. He's the great... One word, and you're gone. Except for Trump. Because we represent you. Because we represent you. Thank you. Thank you. No, but it's true. It's a tough business. One word. And you're gone. It's an incredible kind of a profession to have. That's why they're scared. They go around, they're petrified. They're petrified that they're going to insult 15 people and lose an election by calling out these 4 people, the squad. No. By calling them out because
we don't like when they talk about evil Jews. We don't like when they say horrible things about Israel. They say, you know, people are opposed to Israel and they can express what their opposition. But when they say it with venom, hatred, and language that nobody would use, it's incredible. And then you don't have the Democrats fighting for Israel, and they end up passing things that have nothing to do with what the original problem was. You saw that. So I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know. They have a big problem because they have others than these four. I could name another 20 right now without looking at a note. I could name another 20 that I think are in many ways worse. They're worse. They're not in this group, but they're worse than this group. And they're Democrats. And at some point we will be naming them, if you don't mind, because we want to get the word out. We have to get the word out. As conservatives, we're grateful for the great heritage that we have, the heritage of being an American, so important to all of us. We know that America is the most just and virtuous republic ever conceived. I mean, we fight for other countries. I was with other countries 2 weeks ago, and we had the G20. And I'm talking to different people. Who do you fight for? Just our country. Who do you fight for? Just our country. Who do you fight for? And we fight for all these countries. And it costs us a fortune. And some of the countries are really wealthy. By the way, I've gone to all of them, say they have to now pay for their military.